So where were you 2 weeks ago with your preseason Washington prediction, and where are you now after 2 games? The NFL, man, it's recency bias. It's week to week. Things change dramatically. So I was at 11-6 and had them representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. I did. Um, I'm not coming off of that. It's too early to come off of that. There's just so much more football to be played. And early season NFL football is so often misleading. Week one, definitely, but really, the first few weeks of the NFL season is misleading. There didn't seem to be a lot misleading about the Packers on Thursday night, especially their defense. That is for sure. And the Eagles are sitting there as the defending champs, 2-0. I'm not sure really through 2 weeks there's been a more impressive team in the league than the Green Bay Packers. In fact, I did see with some of the NFL power rankings that came out yesterday, they were number one. I think ESPN had them as the number one team in the league. No, they didn't. Somebody else did. Maybe it was Yahoo. They had Buffalo was one, Philly two, Green Bay was three. Baltimore was four, Detroit was five. Detroit way up after last week. Washington, by the way, fell to ninth from sixth. I did see Washington at 11th and 12th in various power rankings. This is the nature of everybody. Analysts, they get paid to analyze NFL football. Fans, sports talk hosts. I mean, it's a roller coaster, man. 1 week you're convinced one team is one thing, and the next week you're like, wait a minute, that didn't look like what it looked like last week. The Giants, a perfect example from week one to week two. Look, they are right now suffering more injuries. They've had some devastating injuries, losing Eckler, Wise, Jones, losing Bates and Noah Brown here for a bit, more likely than not Sunday at the very least. Last year, they got pretty fortunate with injuries. Injuries are the thing you can't predict heading into a season, but end up being a huge, huge influencer on an NFL team's season. So obviously, if they end up having, a high number of man games lost due to injury, it's going to be devastating because they don't have the depth that other teams have. Not everybody has a lot of depth, but Washington, as we know, because of poor drafting, certainly before this regime, they don't have a lot of depth. They don't have a lot of answers for losing Noah Brown. They don't have a lot of answers for losing Austin Eckler or Dietrich Wise or, a John Bates for any amount of time. They certainly don't have an answer for losing Jaden Daniels. Hopefully it is one game max. And by the way, still no real read on that. Dan Quinn is going to speak today at 12:30 before they practice. We'll carry that live for you. I think, I certainly am more influenced by right now what I think, hunch 2 weeks in, so you don't know for sure, is just an absolute loaded NFC. Green Bay, Philly, Tampa, San Francisco, Detroit. I think Atlanta is better than people think. I still think that Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in the NFC. So if they can just get to the postseason, I'd give Washington a chance against anybody. We saw it last year. It's not like their roster was much better last year. Some might say now they're missing De'Ami Brown. They're missing, Zacchaeus, maybe, certainly through 2 games. But I still would give them a chance if they can get there. So I'm sticking with my prediction right now. But I am teetering on this prediction. And it has something to do with the injuries and just the idea that, this could be one of those years injury-wise. But a lot more to do with, I knew the Eagles were going to be a great team. But now that you've got potentially 2 great teams in the NFC, if not 3, and I think the Rams are close. The key with them is health, clearly. And look, they beat the Texans and the Titans to open up the season. They play at Philly this Sunday, 1 o'clock. Same window. That game should be in the late window on Fox, man. I don't know what they're doing. They should have flipped that. They could have flipped it. I forget when they can start with the flexing. Maybe it's too early for that. Did you know, by the way, in the last 11 games, the Rams are 9-0, except for the 2 losses to Philadelphia, regular season last year, and then, of course, in the divisional round of the postseason. I'm teetering. but I'm going to stick with 11-6, and I'm going to stick with they're going to do really well in the postseason. But it could be difficult given the NFC landscape. Max, you were at 11-6. You also had them in the Super Bowl.
I did.
You had them winning Super Bowl 60. I had them losing the Super Bowl. Have these two games changed your mind?
Much like you, I'm not coming off the prediction yet because, as you said, we're 2 weeks in. We're 2 weeks into this season. A lot can change. I remember 2 years ago when the Washington Commanders went 2-0, and I was thinking that Sam Howell could be the guy, and I believe I said it to my current boss, Chris Kynard, and egg on my face after that year. That was great. But I say all that to say a lot can change 2 weeks in. Now, I definitely I had this Packers game chalked up as a loss going into the season, so it wasn't really surprising. But it was such a dominant win for the Packers, and I mean, it felt like every other play, a guy was getting hurt, getting carted off the field, limping off. Trainers had to come out. It was just much like you said, this could be one of those years. So like I said, I'm not coming off the prediction yet. I still think that 11-6 is feasible. Now that depends on Jaden's status for this week and how this week goes. But I mean, we'll talk to me next week, and I might have a completely different.
Yeah,
thought
this
on how
Sunday's
this
a big game.
Yeah,
this Sunday it's not must win. It's not code red. It's not any of those things. But with 2 road games, and by the way, 4 road games in their next 5 after Sunday. This is a critical game to get here early in the season because losing to the Raiders, and this game is served up schedule-wise. Raiders on a short week, Washington on the longest rest other than having a bye. They've got this mini bye playing a team coming off Monday night. The only way you can have a bigger net rest advantage is if you're coming off a bye week and they're coming off a Monday night game. So it's a huge advantage, not to mention West Coast team coming east for an early kick. And the Raiders got beat up a little bit on Monday Night Football by the Chargers. The Chargers are nasty. So this really is a served-up game. Of course, if Jaden doesn't play in it, you're talking about a game that'll be close to pick 'em. The line right now is sitting at 3, down from 6.5. But that's because the status of Jaden is in doubt. If he is ruled out, that line will come down even more, and the game will be, basically an odds toss-up or close to it. Washington might still be a 1.5 point favorite, something like that. So you fall to 1-2 with 4 of the next 5 on the road against the Falcons, Chargers, then home against the Bears on Monday night, and then at Dallas and at Kansas City. That is not you play them one at a time. Cliche, coach. But yeah, Sunday's big. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Phone lines are open. What was your prediction 2 weeks ago, all right, for the season? And have the 2 games that have been played, 1-1, sitting here with some injuries, understanding that the landscape in the NFC is legit, have you changed your mind? Let's start with Greg in Gaithersburg. Greg, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Hey, I haven't changed at all. I think, and I don't know what Green Bay did during the preseason as far as how much they played starters or not. And I think that this may be a reflection on everybody, the coaches as well as the players, and not having a solid enough preseason to know where our weaknesses were. It doesn't bother me. I'm not worried. I think our depth is okay. I don't think it's great, but then again, I don't think any team's depth is great in the league. So, I'd rather not have any of these guys hurt, but it's part of the game and you got to prepare for it. And I think we'll be okay. I'm going to stick with 11-6, just like you.
Thanks for the call. I'm looking up to see what Green Bay did in the preseason. I know this is a big thing with a lot of you. They played their starters for a series in the first game, but it looks like after the first game, they didn't play anybody. Interesting. Washington played their starters for a series in the second game of the preseason. So yeah, they played in the first preseason game. Jordan Love and some of the receivers did. They lost, by the way, 30-10 to the Jets, and then they didn't play again in the last two preseason games. So not a lot of starter action for Matt LaFleur's Packer team in the preseason either. Let's go to Joe in Springfield. Joe, what did you have 2 weeks ago for the season, and have you changed your mind?
Hey, what's up, Kevin? So I had 10-7 or 11-6. I was going back and forth. I'm going to say 11-6, and I'm going to stick with that. However, Kevin, honestly, considering how the NFC was last year when the playoffs started, 11-6 or 10-7 could knock you out of the playoffs, because look how many teams went 10-7 last year and missed the playoffs.
Well, Seattle went 10-7, missed. Green Bay was the 7 seed at 11-6 last year. Yeah, it was
exactly.
It was a loaded conference last year too.
Yeah. So I will say that, but I mean, it depends on how Jaden does. I mean, and honestly, real quick, I just got to say this: if Jaden is not good to go Sunday, don't play him. And the good thing, Kevin, about this is that we have a current ownership who is not interfering in this. We haven't heard anything. They're letting the GM and head coach make the decision, and the doctors as well. Thank goodness the previous ownership is not around anymore. This will be a whole new, different direction of deja vu all over again. But I'm going to say 11-6. I'll stick with it. Let's see what happens, because this schedule, Kevin, like you said, is going to be tough. If we lose to Vegas on Sunday, this could be, I'm not saying panic just yet, but it could be interesting from here on out. So take care, Kevin.
Look, if they lose to the Raiders on Sunday, there's going to be full-fledged panic. There's going to be screaming and yelling and running through the streets, because at 1-2, then going to Atlanta and to the Chargers, I think people will say the season's over. Now, if Jaden doesn't play and they lose, it may have a different context and a different perspective. By the way, I'm with you. I think if he's not 100%, you don't play him Sunday. But I think if he is 100%, you play him. But if there is any sort of concern about the knee and he's not exactly 100%, you don't have to play him in this game. You would have to play him in a late season, meaningful playoffs or go home game, or a playoff game itself, if he weren't 100%. If he were, say, a little bit hobbled, yeah, you play your best players in those games. I mean, there's a difference between being hurt and injured. But I think if there's any risk at all, they won't do it. I think it's totally different from last year. And of course, if Dan were the owner, first of all, they would have traded up and picked Caleb Williams. So we wouldn't even have Jaden on the team. And if Jaden were on the team, he would be pressing the head coach to play him regardless, as he did with RG3 a week after the LCL injury against the Cleveland Browns back in 2012.